Hey, welcome to another episode of Retroware TV. I'm John D.
And I'm Ito. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're back in the studio and we're going to take a look at our favorite arcade games.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the games that we would go to first when we walk through the arcade doors. Check out our first review.
Back in the 1980s, the arcades were in their heyday. Titles such as Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, and Centipede were all the craze. My personal favorite games consisted of mostly flying games, such as 1942, Zaxxon, Time Pilot, and many more. All were great games bringing something different to the table. To me though, there always felt like something was missing. Sure, all the games had the right elements for a good flying game, but I always needed them to push it a little further. I needed more chaos, I needed more speed, I needed to feel like I was flying this plane. It wasn't until 1987 that I got my wish. Released by Sega and created by one of their most famous designers, Yu Suzuki, Afterburner 2 was a giant leap forward in flight simulation and, most importantly, arcade games. The game came in two flavors: the classic stand-up cabinet, which incorporated a throttle lever as well as a flight stick, and the sit-down cockpit-style cabinet, which moved with the player's action and was the definitive way to play the game. This version brought to the arcades an experience that was never before available, as it was one of the most interactive games available for the time. Your experience would begin right at takeoff, as the cabinet would move from a flat position to a quick tilted back position, giving you the feeling of taking off in the plane. This was enhanced by the awesome sound effects and music that left you in a let's kick some ass state of mind. From there, the adrenaline keeps pumping as you turn and burn through the game's 21 moderately difficult stages. The controls are fairly simple, having two forms of attack: your main guns and your missiles, all located on the game's flight stick as it would be in a real fighter jet. One of the most powerful controls though is the throttle lever, where you can increase and decrease the speed of your plane with ease. Throwing on the afterburners and doing barrel rolls would increase the speed of the action, as it was one of the key defining actions in the game. Now, some of you might be asking yourself, what about Afterburner 1? Well, both titles were released the same year, and the difference between the two is very minimal. They both had the exact same stages, with Afterburner 2 having a few more. It is also rumored that the original Afterburner didn't even have the throttle lever. Not only that, but it is actually unclear if Afterburner 1 ever made it past the prototype stage. Even though all the arcade cabinets you saw in the arcade said Afterburner, they were indeed Afterburner 2. Though there are ports of Afterburner 1 for various home consoles. So as it stands, Afterburner 2 is the definitive version of the game. The game could not have been released at a better time. 1 year prior, the hit Top Gun was released, leaving both grown-ups and children alike urging for the need for speed. This game was essentially Top Gun in video game form. It was leaps ahead of the NES game released by Konami. Instead of picturing myself as the loony Tom Cruise, aka Maverick, talk to me, Ghost, I always pictured myself as the Iceman. I knew it! Shit! He was so much cooler. Anyway, the game was one of many games created by Yu Suzuki, who created other arcade titles such as Space Harrier, Outrun, and Hang On during the 80s arcade era. Suzuki would later go on to create the infamous Virtua Fighter series and the cult classic Shenmue. Many of Suzuki's games would be featured in Shenmue and its sequel, as the main character Ryu would often visit arcades where full 3D rendered renditions of the arcade cabinets would be shown. Probably the coolest which was featured in Shenmue 2 was Afterburner 2. The game was located in a secret location in an abandoned building. There, players would feast their eyes on the machine that is shown in a heavenly ambiance with beams of light shining down on it. It took a long time for Sega to make a true sequel to Afterburner. There was Afterburner 3 for the Sega CD, but it was a horrible early 90s game. In fact, it was a port of a Japan-only arcade game called Strike Fighter. More recently though, Sega put some life back into the series with the 2006 release of Afterburner Climax for the arcades. It is a truly awesome experience that takes the initial Afterburner gameplay and pushes it even further. It includes such things as ground targets, bigger, tougher enemy planes, and a Matrix-style slowdown option called Climax. Here, you can slow down time and fire at multiple targets with ease. The machine itself is simply awesome. Sega went with a more open cockpit this time though, and included a big widescreen HD LCD that heightens the Afterburner experience even further. I'm really looking forward to see if this game comes to the home consoles. The PSP also saw its own exclusive release with Afterburner Black Vulcan. The game's similar to Climax, though it is a more story-driven based game and includes the options to choose different pilots and jets. To this day, Afterburner 2 remains one of the most beloved arcade titles ever. The game is still fun and even holds up 20 some odd years after it originally debuted in the arcades. It defined how high-action jet fighting planes games should be. With the series having a recent revival, this series has a chance to reach a whole new audience. My only hopes are that Sega will continue making sequels to this great and memorable series.